Have you ever heard something late at night that you just can't explain? A sound that doesn't quite belong? Something that sticks in your brain like a splinter? That's how this whole thing started for me. My name's Ricky, I'm 35 now, living with my wife and kid in Indiana. But back in the summer of 2003, I was just 21 and working the graveyard shift as a security guard at this abandoned old plastics factory near a town called Hollow Creek, Kentucky. A real small place. You blink, you miss it, that job. It was supposed to be simple. Show up, walk the perimeter every hour, and make sure no kids or vagrants get inside. Easy money. I didn't care that it was overnight. There was something nice about the stillness. Nothing but the wind and the hum of the nearby power lines. The other guards hated the night shift. Said the place gave them the creeps. They talked about weird noises, shadows that moved when they shouldn't, and one guy even claimed to have seen a little girl standing in the hallway near the old break room, just standing there, staring. He quit the next day. Me? I thought it was all nonsense. I didn't scare easily, or at least, I wasn't used to it. Things went smoothly for about a year, but then one night I noticed something weird. The front gate, the kind with the metal bar that lowers when a car leaves or enters, wasn't locking properly. It looked like someone had been messing with it. You could jiggle it just right and it would pop open like a toy. At first I figured it was just rust or age, but then I started noticing tire tracks in the gravel behind the building, fresh ones. At first I thought it was just local teens sneaking in to drink or fool around. We were right on the edge of town, and everyone knew that Hollow Creek didn't have much for entertainment. No movie theater, no bowling alley, just a few gas stations and a Baptist church. Then one night I was doing my rounds when I saw it. A silver sedan parked way in the back near the shipping dock. I flicked my flashlight at it, and just like that the engine roared to life and it tore off. Gravel flying everywhere. It took me a second to catch up, and by the time I got to the front gate the car was gone. Just taillights fading into the woods. It happened again 2 nights later. Same spot, different car, a red Ford this time. I got closer, real quiet, and saw 2 teenagers kissing in the front seat. Just kids, probably juniors or seniors at the high school. I banged my flashlight on the window and they bolted like I was the devil himself. Stuff like that kept happening. I wasn't mad. I mean, we were all dumb kids once, right? I just waved my light and they'd scatter. It became kind of a game, honestly. But then one night in October, something changed. It was a cold, windy night. The kind where every sound seems louder, leaves skittering across the pavement, branches creaking overhead. I spotted another car tucked behind the loading dock. It was older, maybe a 90s Buick, dark blue, paint flaking off in patches. I did my usual routine, shined the flashlight, waited for movement, but this time, nothing. The car didn't move. No flicker of light inside. No startled gasps. Just stillness. I got a weird feeling then. Not fear exactly, but like my stomach dropped a few inches. Something about the way the wind died right then. It made everything too quiet. I walked up slowly, my boots crunching the gravel. The windows were fogged up, but not from people breathing inside. More like condensation from the cold night air on an empty car. When I reached the passenger side, I knocked gently. Still nothing. So I looked inside, and that's when I saw them, 2 teenagers. A boy in the driver's seat, a girl slumped next to him. But something was wrong. The boy's head was tilted at a weird angle, and there was a wire, like a guitar string or something, wrapped tight around his neck, digging deep into the skin. His face was swollen purple-blue. His eyes were wide open. Way too wide. I can still see them sometimes when I close my eyes. The girl looked like she'd been stabbed in the neck. Blood had dried in thick streaks down her shirt and pooled in her lap. Her mouth was slightly open and her head was resting against the window like she'd fallen asleep. But she wasn't sleeping. Neither of them were. I stumbled back, almost tripped over my own feet. My hands were shaking so bad I could barely grab my radio. I called it in, voice cracking like a kid. 10 minutes later, the sheriff showed up, just one guy, old and tired looking. He peeked into the car, let out a long breath, then told me to head to the front office and wait. By the time the sun started to rise, the place was crawling with cops. Yellow tape everywhere, forensics folks snapping photos, taking notes. They asked me a bunch of questions I barely remember answering. What time did I find them? Did I touch the car? Did I see anyone else? I just kept shaking my head. I was in shock. The worst part? Those kids had been missing for 3 days. Their names were Brandon and Haley, seniors at Hollow Creek High, a couple, supposed to be planning a Halloween party that weekend. It was a local story for a while, but nothing ever came of it. No arrests, no suspects, just a couple of scared parents and a town that started locking its doors a little earlier. I took a week off. Told my boss I had the flu, but when I came back I couldn't stop thinking about that car. That's quiet. Those eyes. Every time I did my rounds I felt like something was watching me. And I don't mean in the paranoid looking over your shoulder kind of way. I mean it felt like someone was behind me, breathing, close. A couple of times I even heard footsteps, soft and crunching, like someone pacing behind the loading dock. But whenever I turned around, nothing. One night I swear I saw a girl standing near the fence line, pale, wearing a hoodie. I blinked and she was gone. After that I quit. Got a job at a warehouse upstate. I started fresh. A year later, I moved to Indiana with my girlfriend, now my wife. We had a baby boy and I tried real hard to push that night out of my head. But sometimes, especially in October, I still hear that radio call in my dreams. The static, my own voice shaking, and always, those eyes staring back at me from behind the glass. I know it sounds crazy, but I've always believed those kids weren't the first, and they won't be the last. There's something about that factory. Something rotten buried beneath all that concrete and steel. And sometimes, late at night when the wind's just right, I swear I can still hear tires crunching gravel. So if you ever find yourself driving through a small town called Hollow Creek, and you see an old factory sitting dark on the edge of town, keep driving. Don't stop. Don't explore. And if you see a car parked around the back with fogged up windows, don't go near it. Some things are better left alone. And like my granddad used to say, the dead don't rest easy when they've got unfinished business. Hey, I'm Nora. I live in this quiet little town called Maple Hollow in Oregon. Real small. Everyone waves. Kids play in the same yards we did growing up. The kind of place people think nothing bad ever happens. But that's not true. Not even close. This happened just last year, 2023. I was 28, trying to keep life together. Single mom. Stress was part of the package. But nothing I went through prepared me for what was coming. It started like a normal night. My daughter Lila was already asleep in her room. I was lying in bed scrolling through Instagram when I saw a DM pop up. A message request from someone I didn't recognize. Now, I get random DMs sometimes, usually spam, bots, or fake giveaways, so I was about to ignore it. But the profile looked normal. A girl around my age, said she lived right here in Maple Hollow. The message just said, "Hey." I didn't think much of it. Maybe someone from town I hadn't met yet, so I replied, "Hi, do I know you?" with a smiley face just to be polite. A minute later I got a response, but it wasn't a text, it was a voice note. At first I was just curious. I mean, who sends a voice note to a total stranger? I figured, why not? I pressed play. What came out of my phone still haunts me. The voice said, "Hello, Nora." I froze. It sounded off, not like a real person. It had this flat robotic tone, like one of those cheap AIs trying to sound human but missing every bit of warmth. Cold, hollow, unnatural. Then it said something that made my stomach twist into knots. "I've been watching you for a long time. You need to die, but not just you. Your daughter does too." My mouth went dry. My body felt like it sunk 5 feet into the bed. My ears were ringing like my brain couldn't even process what I was hearing. The message kept going. It talked about how someone, whoever was behind this, and was going to make me watch as Lila was hurt. They said things I don't even want to repeat. And the worst part? They knew everything. They described my house. The color of the siding, the cracked stone on the porch, even the squeaky screen door that I kept forgetting to fix. They knew Lila's name, her school, what color her backpack was. I remember jumping out of bed and running to the window, yanking the curtain back like I expected to see someone right there, watching. But the street was empty. Still. Too still. I wanted to call the cops, but I was shaking so bad I could barely hold my phone. And in my head I kept thinking, they won't do anything. They'll just say block them and move on. I needed someone real, someone I could trust, so I called Evan. Evan and I had known each other since middle school. We dated on and off through the years, and we'd broken up again a few months before this all started, but we still talked. He was still around. And honestly, he was the only person who'd ever made me feel safe. He showed up in 20 minutes, didn't even ask questions on the phone. When I opened the door, I just collapsed into his arms. I couldn't even speak. He took my phone into the kitchen, listened to the message, and came back looking pale, like really pale. He was quiet for a second, then said, "We need to go to the cops. Like now." He told me that police had better tech now, that cyber stalkers were getting caught all the time. Said he saw some documentary on how they could trace accounts, even if they were using fake names or burner phones. And he stayed that night, sat in the living room with the lights off, just watching out the window while I tried to sleep. He barely moved, just sat there keeping guard. The next morning I called the police. A couple days later, a detective named Rodriguez came to the house. She worked cyberstalking cases specifically. She explained everything really clearly, told me not to delete a single message. Every voice note, every username, every weird little thing had to be saved. It was evidence, and the messages kept coming. New accounts, all innocent at first. Like, "Hey, are you Nora from Maple Hollow?" But I knew the second I clicked accept, I'd get another voice note. I stopped listening to them. I just let them pile up, unread, untouched. Rodriguez said that was the right thing. Let the tech guys handle it. Then things changed again. One night I was brushing my teeth, getting ready for bed, and saw I had a missed call. The number wasn't blocked, just one I didn't recognize. But the call came in around 11 p.m., so I figured maybe it was the detective trying to reach me late. There was a voicemail. I hit play. It was that voice again, monotone, dead. I hung up after just a few words. My heart was beating so fast I felt dizzy. I sat on the bathroom floor crying until I could breathe again. Then I called Evan again. He showed up. Again. Held me. Told me it was going to be okay. He even helped Lila back to bed when my crying woke her up. I remember watching him sit on her bed, rubbing her back, whispering that she was safe. And that morning, he drove her to school so I could talk to the detective without scaring my daughter. Rodriguez told me sometimes stalkers lose interest and disappear. But mine didn't. A week passed. Fewer messages, no calls. I thought maybe it was over. Then came the banging. It was around midnight. Lila was at my mom's for a sleepover. I had just stepped out of the shower when I heard it, this deep, angry pounding on the front door. It didn't sound like knocking. It sounded like someone was trying to break the door. Shake it off its hinges. I grabbed my phone, locked my bedroom door, and hid behind it, dialing 911. I told the dispatcher I had a stalker, that I thought he was here. She stayed on the line while I sat there, holding my breath, staring at the doorknob like it might twist any second. Then the banging stopped. A moment later, I heard sirens. The dispatcher told me the officers had arrived. I waited until she gave me the all clear to go downstairs and let them in. They searched the yard. Found nothing, but the fear didn't stop there. A few days later, I came back home to grab some things. The door was unlocked. Nothing looked broken. But when I walked into the kitchen, there was a piece of paper pinned to my fridge. Printed. Clean. Perfectly aligned. It said, "I see you." That emoji at the end? That stupid little smiley face? I swear it was the creepiest part. I moved in with my mom permanently after that. Lila and I slept in her guest room for 2.5 weeks. Evan offered to let us stay with him, but I wanted Lila to feel safe. And my mom's house felt warmer, safer, more familiar. Then one morning the detective called. She said she wanted to come over. She had news. When she arrived, she sat me down and said, "There's good news and bad news. Good news, they found the stalker." I was so happy I almost cried. I remember actually smiling, the first real smile in weeks. But Detective Rodriguez didn't smile back. She said the stalker was smart. Used all kinds of VPNs, fake profiles, spoofed numbers, but they made one mistake. One tiny mistake, that very first Instagram profile, the fake one with the girl's pictures. The stalker had downloaded those pictures without wiping the metadata. GPS data. Timestamps. That was how they traced him. And then she told me who it was. She said, "Nora, I'm so sorry to tell you this. The person behind all of it is Evan." I didn't understand. For a moment, I honestly thought she was joking, or confused. Evan was the only person helping me. He protected me. He drove Lila to school. He sat up all night making me feel safe. I kept saying, no, you're wrong. He was with me through all of it. But she explained. The police found the profiles on his laptop. He'd sent the messages, scheduled the calls. It was all him. He confessed too. They showed me the video. Evan in the interrogation room crying, saying, "I just wanted her to need me." My skin crawled all that time, and the comforting, the hugs, the late-night phone calls. It was him trying to control everything. He made himself the hero of a nightmare he created. He didn't go to jail. Not then, no priors, full confession. They gave him an emergency restraining order and said if he came near me, he'd go straight behind bars. I wanted him gone, and soon, he was. Word got around. Everyone in town heard what he did. He packed up and left. Last I heard, he moved somewhere down south, across the country. Good. Let him stay there. Let him rot there. He ruined a part of my life I'll never get back. But I survived. And I hope that by telling this story, someone out there will recognize the red flags before it's too late. Because sometimes the person protecting you is the one you should fear the most. My name's Jason. This all happened back in 2011 when I was 25 and living alone in a little flat on the edge of Liverpool. I had a pretty sweet setup back then. Nice job at a real estate office, decent money, no one to answer to. Just me, my Xbox, and a fridge full of microwave meals. Life was simple. I wasn't rolling in cash, but I didn't need to be. I could go out on weekends, buy whatever takeaway I wanted, and still have enough left over to feel comfortable. It was that sort of freedom that makes you feel like nothing bad can touch you. Then everything went to hell. When the economy dipped that summer, my company folded like a wet napkin. I was out of a job overnight. No warning, no goodbye, just a cold group email and a locked office door. At first I figured I'd be fine. I had a couple grand saved up, right? Should be enough to float me for a while. But weeks passed. Then months. I sent out dozens of applications. Went to every job fair, even considered moving back in with my mom. Which tells you just how desperate I was getting. Nothing worked. Eventually I had to start claiming benefits just to get by. I hated it. Standing in that dimly lit job center, waiting in line with people who looked just as beat down as I felt. Every time I left that place, I felt like something inside me shriveled a little more. Then one night, while scrolling through my contacts on an old cracked phone, I landed on a name I hadn't thought about in years. Elliot. We'd been close back in school. Used to hang out every weekend, riding bikes, making dumb YouTube videos, stealing our parents' booze. But we drifted apart in our 20s. Last I'd heard, Elliot had gotten deep into dealing weed. Not the sketchy kind. He was more of a neighborhood supplier, selling to uni kids and part-time stoners. He always had cash, though. Always had something new. New phone, new trainers, new bike. I never asked where it came from. I didn't want to know, but now I needed help. And fast. I messaged him one night, half expecting him to ignore me. But to my surprise, he replied almost right away. "Haven't heard from you in forever, mate. What's up?" I told him I needed a favor. Something big. We met up the next day in this dingy little cafe by the canal. He looked the same, scruffy beard, dark hoodie, that laid-back slouch he always had. We ordered chips and tea, and after some awkward small talk, I told him I wanted in. He laughed. Thought I was joking. "Wait, you? Selling weed?" He nearly choked on his tea. "Didn't you once say it'd rot your brain?" "I did," I said. "But right now, my bank account's already doing that." We talked for hours. I told him it'd just be temporary. just until I got back on my feet. I had no interest in becoming some big-time dealer. Just a few bags a week to people I knew. Easy money, low risk. He hesitated, but in the end he agreed. Gave me his supplier's number and walked me through how everything worked. He warned me, though. Keep it small. Keep it quiet. Don't get greedy. At first I listened. I sold to a handful of mates, people I trusted. It was weird, yeah. But it worked. I was making money again. Real money. I could buy groceries without checking my balance. I could sleep at night without worrying about eviction. But money is a funny thing. Once you start making more, you start wanting more. Soon people started messaging me. Hey, my friend said you might be able to help me out. At first I said no. Then I said maybe. Then I started saying yes. Before I knew it, I had 10-12 regulars. All polite, all chill. Some even tipped. And then one night, everything changed. It was a cold Wednesday in November. I'd gone to bed early. Around 2 a.m. I woke up to a strange sound. This low, dull banging from downstairs. I sat up, heart already thudding. Then I heard it again. Bang, 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 not a knock. More like fists slamming the door than a voice. Police! Open up! I froze. My mind raced. Was this it? Had I been caught? I'd been so careful. Never kept more than a few bags in the house, never had large sums of cash lying around. Still, I'd prepared for this. I had hiding spots. Places the police would never find unless they tore the place apart. Trying to stay calm, I got up and crept downstairs. The knocking continued. More forceful now, I called out, "Hold on! I'm coming!" I undid the lock slowly, trying to steady my breathing. Then I opened the door and my blood turned to ice. It wasn't the police. 4 men stood there, all wearing masks. Black hoodies, gloves, weapons. One had a hammer. Another had what looked like a crowbar. No badges, no uniforms. Just silence and menace. I slammed the door, but one of them jammed his boot in the frame. Another rammed his shoulder into it. The whole thing burst open, sending me stumbling backward. I turned and bolted for the kitchen. There was a back door there, but I'd locked it earlier. I was still fumbling with the key when one of them grabbed me from behind. I fought back, kicked, punched, screamed, but then I felt a sharp crack against my leg. The man with the hammer had swung. Pain exploded through me and I collapsed. They dragged me to the living room. My ears were ringing. My head spun. I saw one of them pull out this thick plastic rope, blue and stiff, and begin tying my wrists behind my back. Then my ankles, then my knees. I kept begging them to take whatever they wanted, my laptop, my TV, my wallet. Just leave me alone, but they didn't want my stuff. They wanted my stash, and worse, they already knew about it. When they asked where I kept it, I lied. Told them I didn't know what they were talking about. That's when they started hitting me again. One slammed something into my shin. Another clamped a hand over my mouth to muffle the screams. They beat me until I thought I'd pass out. Then one of them said something I'll never forget. "Tell us where it is or we start cutting." He held up a pair of pliers. I panicked. I felt cold metal grip my toe. I broke. Told them everything. They ransacked the place. Found the money and the weed stashed behind the loose panel in my bedroom wall. When they came back down, the leader looked satisfied. He nodded to one of the others. Put him to sleep. I thought that was it. I thought they were going to kill me. The guy walked up, raised his fist, and punched me clean across the face. Everything went black. When I woke up, the house was silent. The pain hit me all at once. My face throbbed. My legs burned. I tried to move, and that's when I remembered I was still tied up. I panicked. No one knew I was in trouble. No one would check on me until I missed work. And even then, who knows how long that would take. I rolled off the couch and started inching my way toward the landline on the coffee table. Somehow I managed to knock it down. The handset clicked to life. I used my nose and chin to dial the only number I still knew by heart. Elliot's. He didn't answer the first time. Or the second. But finally, on the third try, he picked up. Groggy, confused. "Yo? It's me," I whispered. They broke in. They tied me up. "I need help." He said he couldn't leave. He had his daughter asleep in the car. But when I explained what happened, he changed his mind fast. I told him where to find the spare key in the back garden. Then I just waited. Time slowed to a crawl. Maybe half an hour later, I heard a noise outside. Footsteps. A shadow. And then blessedly Elliot. He came through the back door, cut me loose, and helped me sit up. I was shaking all over. "You're lucky," he said. "Some of these guys don't stop at threats. I know someone who got an iron pressed to his chest. Another who walks with a limp now." "What do I do?" I asked. "I can't call the cops. Can I?" He looked at me dead serious. "Move, get as far away from here as you can. Because once they find you, they always come back." I took his advice. Broke my lease, moved across town. It ruined me financially, but I didn't care. I was done, no more deals, no more side hustles. I went back to the job center, tail between my legs, but alive. And these days, when I hear a knock at the door after dark, I don't answer it. Have you ever had something so weird, so out of place, so deeply wrong that even years later, your brain still tries to explain it away like it was a dream? This happened back in 2003, when my little cousin Max was still in diapers and I had just moved into my first real house with my older sister Kelly. "Yeah," I said, "sister. We weren't a couple or anything like that. Our mom passed a few years before and we figured we'd pool our savings and raise Max together. We found this little townhouse in a quiet spot called Pine Hollow, right on the edge of the woods just outside Eugene, Oregon. It wasn't fancy. Just 2 bedrooms, creaky floors, a small backyard, but it felt like ours. We loved that place the moment we stepped through the front door. The street it was on was tucked away, a dead end with just 7 houses, most of them rentals. Nothing fancy but calm, quiet, no traffic. No late-night parties, no screaming neighbors like the old apartment we left behind. We lived there for almost 9 years, and for the most part they were good years. Max took his first steps in that living room. I built a tree swing in the backyard. We had summer BBQs and snowball fights and birthday parties with way too much cake. But the good memories, as strong as they are, always sit in the shadow of one single night, one that still makes my skin crawl. It was late November, cold enough to need an extra blanket. The whole house was asleep. Max was down the hall in his crib, snoring softly. Kelly had passed out on the couch after working a double shift, and me? I was upstairs in bed, half dreaming about something weird when I heard a noise. A creak. Now old houses creak. You get used to that, but this one sounded off, like weight shifting on a step. Then another sound, softer, like something brushing against the wall. At first I thought maybe Kelly had gotten up. Maybe she was getting a drink or checking on Max, but when I glanced down the hallway, I saw her, still knocked out cold on the couch. Then came the sound of a chair dragging across the kitchen floor. My stomach turned. I didn't panic, not right away. I moved carefully, quietly, not wanting to wake Max. I crept over to my closet and opened the lockbox where I kept my old revolver. I hadn't used that thing in years, but I kept it loaded just in case. I shook Kelly awake, whispered what I'd heard. Her eyes snapped open. I told her to stay upstairs with Max and call the police. She grabbed her phone and I grabbed my flashlight and started down the stairs barefoot. Now, this is where things get strange. As I reached the bottom, I expected to see someone rifling through the living room, maybe after the TV, the speakers, anything valuable. But it was dead silent there. The noise was still coming from the kitchen. I crouched low and padded across the wooden floor, heart hammering like crazy. I froze when I heard the scrape of something metal, cabinet doors. And then, plastic crinkling, like a bag of chips being opened. I reached the kitchen doorway and peeked around the corner. Flashlight off, gun in hand. What I saw didn't make sense there. Standing on a wobbly kitchen chair was a little boy, shirtless, barefoot, wearing nothing but a pair of worn-out cargo shorts. He was maybe 6 or 7. His skin was pale, his ribs showing, and his hair was buzzed down to stubble. He looked like he hadn't bathed in weeks. He was going through our snack cabinet, stuffing chocolate bars and crackers into his shorts like it was a game. Just calmly helping himself, and I just stood there stunned. I expected some desperate burglar or strung-out drifter, but this was a child. I didn't want to startle him, especially standing on that chair. He could fall and crack his head on the tile. So I did the only thing I could think of. I flicked on the kitchen light. He froze, his head turned slowly, and he stared at me. Big dark eyes hollow, like he wasn't entirely there. I kept my voice soft. "Hey, buddy. You okay?" No answer. Just silence. I lowered my gun immediately and tried to smile, even though my heart was racing. "You hungry?" I asked, still nothing. But then I really looked at him, and that's when I noticed something that made my stomach twist into a knot. His skin, his chest and arms were covered in small dark scars. Some looked like burns. Others were jagged, like they'd been made by something sharp. A few looked fresh, but what really made my skin crawl were the marks on his face. Black ink symbols, tiny, almost like runes. They trailed down his jawline and crept across his neck and arm. Someone had tattooed this child. Not one or two by accident, dozens. Small, precise, deliberate. I asked him his name. No answer. He climbed down off the chair, slow and careful, candy still bulging in his shorts. Then he looked toward the back of the kitchen, toward the pantry and the little doggy door we'd kept. Even though we didn't have a dog, that's when a thought hit me like a punch. He wasn't alone. I backed up instinctively, raised the flashlight like a weapon, eyes locked on that dark pantry door. I half expected some monster to come barreling out behind him, some sick creep who'd hurt that boy and was hiding in my house. But then, just like that, the boy bolted. He shot past me so fast I barely moved. Straight into the pantry. I rushed over, expecting to see him hiding in the shadows, but no. All I caught was the last glimpse of his bare feet wriggling through the doggy door and vanishing into the cold, dark night. I stood there frozen. Was that real? Did that just happen? I called the police right away, not to report a break-in. I told them what I saw. A kid, hurt, starving, covered in marks. He needed help. Cops showed up about 45 minutes later. I gave them everything, the way he looked, how he acted, the tattoos, the scars, even which snacks he took. One of the officers, a younger guy, leaned in close and asked if I'd seen anything weird in the neighborhood. Any strange people? Any houses with blacked-out windows or weird noises at night? But Pine Hollow was quiet. Too quiet, maybe. Another officer pointed out something that still chills me. He said, "If that kid's crawling through doggy doors and stealing candy, he's probably been out here for days. Maybe weeks, but where had he come from? Who let a child live like that? Who did that to him? And why didn't he speak?" They said they'd look into it. Took down my statement, but I never heard back. The next few weeks were rough. Every creak, every shadow made my skin crawl. I double-checked every lock, slept with the light on. Even Max started waking up crying in the middle of the night, like he sensed something was off. Sometimes, in the early hours, I'd stare at that doggy door, half expecting to see those tiny legs crawling back through, but they never did. To this day, more than 20 years later, I still think about that night. I still see that kid's eyes, wide and blank, staring at me under the kitchen light. I still hear the chair scraping the floor. I still wonder where he came from, or where he went, and the worst part? I think he wasn't the only one, because a few months after that night, a woman 3 streets over reported something strange. Her dog started barking one night, real aggressive. When she went downstairs, her pantry door was wide open, and she found candy wrappers scattered across the floor, wrappers she knew had been inside a sealed container the night before. She thought it was raccoons. But I wasn't so sure. I never told her about the boy. I didn't want to scare her, but sometimes when it's late and I hear the house creak, I think about him. About the scars, the tattoos, the silence, and I wonder if he's still out there, or if something else is. This happened back in 2007, when I was a sophomore at a small college in Vermont called Elbridge. I lived in an old creaky dorm building called Morgan Hall. You know the kind? Wood floors that echoed every footstep, drafty windows that never shut all the way, and pipes that banged for no reason at all. It was the kind of place that always felt just a little haunted, even in broad daylight. Anyway, this happened during spring semester. It was early May, just warm enough that you could leave your windows open at night without freezing. I had my window cracked because my roommate liked to blast the heat like he was trying to summon Satan. I was fast asleep when I heard voices, not loud yelling, just tense voices. A guy and a girl right outside my window. Now Morgan Hall sits next to a side lot with maybe a dozen parking spots, mostly for night owls and grad students. That's where the voices were coming from. I squinted at my clock, 3:08 a.m. My first reaction was irritation. Like, come on, people. I had a midterm in 4 hours, and someone was having a full-blown argument beneath my window. But then I heard what they were saying, or at least enough to know I wasn't going back to sleep anytime soon. It was mostly whispers, sharp and fast, like they were trying not to be overheard. But every so often the girl's voice would spike in anger, and the guy would hush her, almost panicking. That's what got my attention. It wasn't just a lover's quarrel. It felt secret, desperate. I sat up, leaned a little closer to the window. The curtains were thin, so I could see through them a bit. There was a girl standing just past the edge of the lot, her arms crossed, face turned away from the dorm. The guy had his back to me. At first I thought maybe they were a couple having a dramatic fight. Then I realized, nope, this was a breakup. Or more likely, a post-breakup mess. The guy kept saying things like, "You don't understand, and I never meant to hurt you," while the girl just stood there like a statue and said, "You're disgusting," over and over. Then she said, "I know what you did, Caleb." Caleb, that name clicked. There was a guy named Caleb Decker, who used to date a girl on the 3rd floor right down the hall from me. She was nice, quiet. Her name was Riley, and then I knew. That was Riley outside, and the guy who kept pleading? That had to be Caleb. I should have stopped watching, I know, but something about it felt off. The air felt thick, like a storm was about to hit. They kept going in circles. Caleb muttered something, Riley flinched, and then she said, clear as day, "You should be in prison for what you did to her." Her. Not me. Her. Now I was hooked. What had he done? Who was her? Riley sounded like she wanted to scream but was choking it back. Then things got weird. I swear at one point I heard footsteps on the pavement. Heavy ones, but not from either of them. They were coming from the direction of the woods behind the parking lot. I looked but didn't see anyone. I figured it was my imagination. You know how it is late at night, your brain starts filling in gaps. But then Caleb turned and looked toward the woods too. Just for a second, and when he turned back, he looked scared. He said, "She's not gone. You don't get it." "She won't go away." Riley just laughed, a bitter, empty laugh. "Good," she said. "She shouldn't." That's when Caleb snapped. He turned fast, too fast, and hit her. I don't mean a shove. I mean a full swing. A punch, the sound of it, God, it still makes my stomach turn. It was a crack, sharp and awful. Riley crumpled like a rag doll, hitting the pavement with a sickening thud. I gasped. My hand flew to my mouth and I nearly knocked over my lamp. For a second, Caleb just stood over her. Then he crouched. I thought he was going to hit her again, and I jumped up and yelled out the window, "Hey, stop, I'm calling the cops." He looked up, startled like an animal caught in headlights. Then he bolted. He didn't check on Riley, didn't say a word. Just ran to a beat-up black Jeep and tore out of the lot so fast his tires screeched. I ran to wake my roommate, and by the time we got outside, a bunch of people were already gathering. Riley was on the ground twitching. Not just hurt, convulsing. It was like a seizure or something worse. Her eyes were rolled back. Someone called 911. The ambulance came quick. Thankfully, campus security flagged them down. They said she had a concussion and some sort of neurological episode. They took her away. I thought that was the end of it. I really did. But that's when the rumors started. People said Caleb had been acting strange for weeks. That he'd started sleepwalking. Talking to someone who wasn't there. That he stopped showing up to class and had weird scratch marks on his arms. That he said Riley's best friend Lily, who had gone missing the year before, was still watching him. And then someone dropped a bombshell. The night Lily disappeared, she was last seen leaving a party with Caleb. They never found her. The police questioned him, sure, but there wasn't any proof, just whispers and theories. After the attack on Riley, Caleb disappeared. Not arrested, not expelled, just gone. And here's where it gets even creepier. A few nights after all that, I couldn't sleep. I kept hearing these soft thuds on the window. I figured it was the wind. But then I looked out and I swear I saw someone standing at the tree line. Not moving, just watching the dorm. I blinked and they were gone. Another time I woke up to find my window, one I always locked, wide open. Nothing stolen. Nothing broken, just open. Like someone had been there. I'm not the only one. Other people in Morgan Hall started having nightmares, hearing whispers through the vents. Cold spots in their rooms. One girl on the second floor swore she saw a pale hand pressed against her window one night, except she was on the third story. It all built up to one thing. The basement Morgan Hall has a locked basement nobody uses. Maintenance, maybe. But one night, a bunch of students decided to sneak down there with a flashlight and a bolt cutter. I wasn't there, but one of my friends was. They found something scribbled on the concrete wall in what looked like dried blood. It said, "She's still here." Under it, scratched deep into the wall, was a name, Lily. No one lives in Morgan Hall anymore. They shut it down after a fire started in the laundry room the following year. No one was hurt, but the official report said the wiring had been chewed through, like by an animal. Or maybe something else. I graduated and moved away, but I still think about Riley, about Lily, about that sickening crack when Caleb hit her and the twitching on the pavement, and the whispers I kept hearing in the vents after that night. And sometimes, just sometimes, when I'm walking past a dark window or hear footsteps behind me when I'm alone, I think about that night again. And I wonder if she ever really left. Because I swear, when the wind hits just right, I can still hear a voice outside my window whispering, "She's not gone." Alright, so let me tell you something that happened to me last summer that still makes my skin crawl every time I think about it. I live in a quiet little town called Elmridge. Not much happens here. It's one of those sleepy, out-of-the-way places where people leave their doors unlocked and still wave at strangers. You know, the kind of town where nothing weird ever happens, until it does. Anyway, my name's Drew. I'm 32, and because of some health issues, I mostly work from home. My room is basically my world. My office, my bedroom, and my everything else. It's on the ground floor of a small 2-story house I share with my cousin Tyler. He's out a lot, working night shifts at the gas station across town, so I'm usually here by myself. My room is at the front of the house. It used to be the old sunroom back when the house was built in the 70s, so it's got this massive 3-panel bay window that looks out into a little patch of front yard. It's nice in the daytime, tons of sunlight, and you can hear the birds and squirrels doing their thing. The windows open outward from the bottom, and when it gets hot, I crack them open to let in the breeze. Problem is, when they're open, someone could literally just step over the windowsill and into the room. It's low enough to make that pretty easy. I know, it sounds reckless. But look, it gets really hot here during the summer, and I can't deal with stale, stuffy air. Plus, I never thought it was risky. I mean, who's gonna sneak into a room that's clearly occupied, right? I always figured if someone tried anything, I'd hear them coming. They'd have to open the squeaky old garden gate, walk up the gravel path, and then somehow climb in without me noticing. Didn't seem likely until it happened, but I'm getting ahead of myself. One more thing you should know. I never put curtains up after we moved in. The yard has this tall, bushy hedge that blocks the view from the street, so there didn't seem to be much point. And I hate blocking natural light. When I need to sleep during the day, I just use a sleep mask. Easy fix, right? Everything was fine until the town installed these new LED streetlights. The old ones had this soft amber glow that kind of made the street look cozy at night. The new ones? Bright white, harsh, they turned our whole street into a crime scene spotlight. One of them was installed right outside my window, and it lit up my room like a hospital operating table. They were supposed to put those little covers on the back to keep the light from blasting into people's houses. But for some reason, ours didn't get one. Everyone on the street complained. Of course, nothing was done, so I improvised. I bought this folding privacy screen online, one of those canvas ones with a vintage map printed on it. It looked cool and did the job well enough. I could move it around, block whatever I wanted, and still let air in. It wasn't perfect, but it was better than sweating in floodlights every night. It worked, for a while. Then, one night in late August, something weird happened. I was sitting in my chair facing the screen, just flipping through a horror comic I'd read a dozen times already. I had the windows cracked open. It was one of those muggy, restless nights where the air feels thick and heavy, and you just can't get comfortable. Suddenly, there was this pop outside, like a fuse blowing, but louder. At first I thought maybe a branch had fallen on the streetlight. I peeked around the screen, and sure enough, the streetlight had gone dark. I smiled. That thing had been blinding me for months. Finally, some peace. But about an hour later, the entire house went dark. At first, I thought maybe the power had tripped. I checked my phone. Still had about 48% battery. Then I heard it. From somewhere down the street, drilling, clanking, like workers messing with something. I figured they were doing emergency repairs or something, but still. Why the whole neighborhood? It wasn't storming, it wasn't windy, just sudden darkness. And when you're used to always having a little light around, even from street lamps or the glow of your computer, real darkness hits different. I mean pitch black. No flickering light from the hallway. No hum of the fan. Just me, the dark, and the occasional creak from the old floorboards. I tried to distract myself. Opened the comic again and used my phone's flashlight to read, but it was a strain. After a while, I gave up, set the book down, and leaned back in the chair. I don't even remember dozing off. But then, I woke up to a sound. Scrape. It was quiet but close, like something dragging across the floor. My brain wasn't fully awake yet, and for a few seconds I just sat there, confused. Skrrr, there it was again. Closer now. My eyes were wide open, but I couldn't see anything, not even the outline of the screen. Then, movement. Not fast, not jerky, careful, deliberate. I could barely make out the shape of the screen shifting. At first I thought it was falling over. But no, it wasn't tipping. It was folding back. Someone was folding it back. My blood ran cold. I couldn't see their face, but I saw the edge of the screen shift again. Just enough to let in a sliver of moonlight. That's when I saw a hand, a pale bony hand gripping the screen. Slowly it moved it aside, and in that eerie little beam of light from the crescent moon, I saw the silhouette of someone standing just inside my room. They had come in through the open window. I sat perfectly still, frozen in my chair. My heart was pounding so hard I thought they might hear it. I was completely in the dark, but I could see just enough of them to know they weren't some burly robber. They looked young, thin, almost frail, but that didn't make it less terrifying. In fact, it made it worse. They moved like they were used to sneaking around, like this wasn't their first time. They took a step forward. Their foot scraped against something on the floor, a cardboard box I'd been meaning to throw out. Then they bumped into the side table, and a little figurine fell off and rolled under the couch with a clink. They froze. I froze. For a full 5 seconds, it was completely silent except for my racing heartbeat. I knew I couldn't just sit there. What if they had a knife? What if they were waiting for me to move first? My phone was on the side table out of reach, so I did the only thing I could think of. In my deepest, creepiest voice, the kind of voice you'd hear in a campfire story, I growled, "Get out. Before you can't live to regret it." The figure flinched so hard they crashed into the screen, knocked over a lamp, and scrambled toward the window. I heard them trip, curse under their breath, and then gone. Out the window in one terrified blur. I leapt up, grabbed my phone, and flicked on the flashlight. I ran to the window and caught a glimpse of them running down the street. Looked like a teenager, baggy hoodie, backpack, messy hair. Just sprinting like his life depended on it, and maybe in that moment he thought it did. I didn't call the police. What was I going to say? That a kid poked his head into my window and ran off? They wouldn't do anything. Honestly, part of me felt bad for him, but another part of me, the part still shaking, knew that wasn't just some bored kid out for a thrill. He came into my room like he knew what he was doing, like he'd done it before. That's what sticks with me. The way he moved. The calm, the precision. He wasn't there to grab a TV or a wallet. He didn't take anything, he just watched, waited. That night changed everything. I got locks for the windows. I bought blackout curtains. I even set up a motion-activated light in the garden. And still, every night when I turn off the lights, I remember that hand on the screen. That pale hand moving slow. And I wonder how many nights he was out there before he decided to come in. The end, or maybe not. If you're still reading this, just a little advice from someone who's been there. Lock your windows, even if you think it's safe, even if you live in a quiet town, because all it takes is one night, one power outage, one strange sound in the dark, and someone might be waiting, just outside your window,